guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another episode in Palette Week. Today I have my monthly palette ranking video to share with you guys today. So I have 9 palettes that I've been testing throughout the month of March to share my thoughts with you guys on today and rank them from worst all the way to the best. If you guys want to catch my previous monthly palette rankings, I will have my palette ranking playlist down below, as well as just my palette playlist with tons of palette content. So if you want to see more palette content from me, that playlist will be linked below. If you guys have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project panning content, palette themed content, or just chit chatting about makeup, I would love if you would subscribe before moving on. And other than that, let's just get into this ranking video. Okay, you guys, the way that I like to do my monthly palette ranking is I will not come on to rank a palette until I have tried every shade in the palette at least one time. So some of these palettes I've had for a couple of months. I started using them a couple months ago, but I have just finally gotten around to using every shade. Like for example, I've started to use the larger Odenseye palette that came out in this collection. I don't know why I'm showing this right now. In the Norms collection, I think it's the Norms palette, but I haven't tried every shade yet, so I will be ranking that in the future. But like I said, I do have 9 palettes to rank for you guys today, and actually 8 of it, this was so incredibly hard because basically 8 of them I absolutely adore. But let's start with my least favorite, and honestly a palette that I'm just really not impressed with, and that is the Alter Ego Blooms palette. This is what the palette looks like. It is supposed to be a dupe for the Natasha Denona Love palette, and I just think the quality in this one is really inconsistent. It's not in line with the other Alter Ego palettes that I've tried. So I've tried the Artemis palette as well as the Canyon palette, and I love both of those, but I just was not impressed with many of the shades throughout this palette. The color story also just not a color story that is my favorite, which I knew going into it, but some of the shades specifically like the purples and even this red, it just really is not my favorite. The shimmers lack a punch, which could be good for some people who like more of a subtle eye. However, I do feel like they almost add age to your eyelids. They're just not a smooth formula, and I just really was not that impressed with the Blooms palette, unfortunately. So the next 8 palettes, super hard for me to rank because honestly I really enjoy all of these palettes for one reason or another. But coming in at number 8, I have the Juvia's Place Nomad palette, and I really like this palette. I think that this is beautiful. I've been reaching for this a ton lately, and this is going to be even more fun to reach for in the fall time when I'm looking for these really grungy, earthy tones. I think it's a really beautiful palette. I absolutely love this middle shade right here. It is such a beautiful shimmer, just the most gorgeous champagne shimmer. I reach for this. Oftentimes I will just reach for this palette to use this shimmer on my lid. I think it's so beautiful. This is super smooth, really easy to blend, really easy to work with, and I'm a big fan of it. But for one reason or another, I just had a little bit more fun with the rest of the palettes that I'm going to share with you. Coming in at number 7, I have this mini Verandi palette that odenseye recently released, and I have really been enjoying this one as well. I don't take pictures always of the looks that I create because oftentimes I'm flying out the door for work, and I feel like a lot of times my pictures I feel don't do my looks justice, or maybe they just don't look that good, whatever. But if I have any videos where I filmed with the palette, I will leave those linked down below as well. And I recently did a look. It was for one of my recent videos. I think it was ranking my high-end, I think it was yesterday's video, ranking my high-end shadows. Sorry, I pre-filmed in advance, so I'm whatever. But I did a look using these 3 shades, so this half of the palette, and I just absolutely loved it. It gave me very summer or springy vibes, kind of vibes like today. Today's a little bit different. I used, what did I use today? Oh, the Limoncello palette from ColourPop. But I also really enjoy the cooler tone side of this as well. This blue shade is so pretty. Honestly, both shimmers in this are super pretty. So there is the blue shade. It's a little bit chunkier, so you kind of really have to rub it out. Again, best applied with a finger, and I always like to do it over a glitter glue. And then I will also swatch the orange shade. And you guys, I said in my last, oh my gosh, ugh, like that is like the most glossy, beautiful thing ever. I die. I said in my February palette ranking series that I was going to try and make sure I got swatches of all palettes included in this month's video. I'm way behind on filming again, and honestly, I'm just not going to be too hard on myself for the fact that I know I'm not going to be able to include swatch pictures of each palette. I'm hoping to get there in April because I know that they're super helpful, but I'm not gonna get around to it this month. I'm just way too behind, so I do apologize, but in the future, I hope to actually include swatch clips of each palette. So coming in 987, coming in at number 6, I have this guy from Glamlite. I actually purchased this. So this is the first Glamlite palette that I am reviewing. I have 3 other Glamlite palettes, and this is the last one that I think I purchased for myself. So I need to get around to fully testing my other ones, but this is the Cherry Pie palette, and I love this. Like, this is amazing. The only reason I'm ranking this one a little bit lower is just because I don't often reach for like some of these warmer like pink shades, but the shimmers in this palette are just absolutely beautiful. Here, I'm gonna swatch Peach, which is this one right here, as well as Apple Pie. So here is Peach, which I already have glitter all over my hands. There's Peach. So beautiful, especially because I have been creating a lot of like more coral looks. I have been reaching into that shade. And then here's Apple Pie, which I don't know if it's going to come across on camera, but it's like this gold with a green shift. It's so beautiful. Again, these shimmers are super, super smooth, so they just look so glossy and lovely on the eyelids. I've been a huge fan of this, and it makes me very, very excited to play around with more Glamlite palettes. Coming in at number, I'm like, how do I want to, yeah. Okay, coming in at number 98765, I have the Urban Decay Naked Wild West palette. I wasn't originally going to pick this palette up, but then I was seeing a lot of positive reviews, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it. I feel like I could get a lot of use out of a lot of the shades in this palette, and I have really, really been enjoying this one as well. I was kind of taken aback by how much I've really liked this palette. This shade did come shattered when I received this. I have reached into this palette almost every day to start my look with one of these 2 shades. And even though this palette doesn't look that versatile, there actually is a ton of range to this because there are both warm and cool tone shades in this. You have your fun pops of blue, and I actually even really enjoy this gray shade up here. I think it's absolutely stunning, and I've been a huge fan of this. Do I think that everybody needs this? No, but if you have been considering this, I would recommend this palette. I've been really impressed with it. Coming in at number 4, I have the Sigma Untamed palette. So I was a little bit nervous to start testing this one out because the last 2 Sigma palettes that I've tried, which are the Enchanted palette, which I did like, and also the Warm Nudes, I liked. Like, I did enjoy the palettes, but I was like not as impressed as I feel like I expected to be. Like, maybe I just held them to like higher expectations, but I have really enjoyed this. I think that this is stunning. I got a ton of compliments on one of my videos where I used this palette. I really love this palette for the purples specifically. So like the Mauve, this really beautiful Spirit shimmery shade, and then Fierce as well as Moxie, I also have really been enjoying. And then for like a more warm terracotta look, I've really enjoyed this shade right here. I've used this as like a one shadow and done and loved the way that that's looked. And then I also really enjoy the greens as well. I did a green look the other day, which I didn't love the way that my wing turned out, but overall I did really enjoy the look. So I think there's a ton of versatility to this palette. This palette, even though I'm not always the most creative and can't always come up with like the most creative looks, I do feel really inspired when I look at this palette. So if you have been eyeing this one, I would absolutely say go for it from Sigma. I was really impressed, and even more so impressed from Sigma. So I can't remember what video it was during Palette Week. I just mentioned that I had only tried the Sigma Corderosa palette one time, and right after filming that, I started to use this palette, and I have not been able to put this down. I've used this like the last 4 days in a row with the exception of today, and I love this. I was expecting this to be my least favorite of the vault of 4 Sigma palettes that I tried, but no, I think it's my favorite, even over the Enchanted palette. Ooh, and I think I like the Untamed more than the Enchanted. Regardless, I wasn't expecting to love this as much as I did, and maybe it's the spring season that's upon us that is making me so just like so happy and so excited to reach for this. But every look that I've created with this, I have been like obsessed with. It's just so warm and fun and beautiful and bright, and I cannot wait to continue to reach into this palette all spring and summer long. I've been really creatively inspired by this palette, which is, I mean, it's just like a warm pink palette, but shockingly, I've been really inspired by that. So that would be my number 3. Coming in at number 2, I have one of my Pat McGrath palettes. This is the, I think this is the Mothership 3. Mine doesn't have it on the back, so I'm just gonna say it's the Mothership 3. I have been so impressed with this. Now, I just recently mentioned that I don't know if I would ever pay the full $125 for the Pat McGrath Mothership palettes. She runs sales on her website every now and again where you can get like up to 30% off on her palettes. And for me, I am just willing to wait rather than get palettes from her right away, because $125 is just so stinking expensive. Now, I do love her special shades. I love her metallics. This emerald shade I am obsessed with. The other day I layered, so I put the emerald shade down first and I layered it with a shade out of what's gonna be my number 1 palette for the month. Out of the Kaleidos Club Nebula palette, I layered this on top. Freaking loved that look. You guys know I love my green shades, but even like this matte brown shade I've been reaching into because her mattes are just so buttery, soft, and smooth and easy to work with. I will say these 3 shades right here are more of just like a satin sheen. They are not as like fiery or intense or punchy, but there are days where I'm looking for just like a softer shimmer on the lid, and these are beautiful for that. So I've been a really big fan of this palette. I knew I was gonna like it. Again, I would always wait for a sale rather than spending $125 on a Pat McGrath palette, but I did really enjoy that one. And then coming in at number 1 for the month has to be the Kaleidos Club Nebula palette in collaboration with Angie. I just adore this palette, and this is not a palette I reach for day to day to create work appropriate looks, but every day I've sat down to film, I swear I reach into this palette for at least 1 shade, and I have to like tell myself to reach for other palettes that I'm trying to test out rather than this one, but I just want to reach for this one all the time. The only shade I'm like really uncomfortable with using is the lime green shade. I haven't found a way to make that work for me. Not that it is a dud shade by any means, I just don't know how to create a look with the lime green shade. But even the bottom row of like reds and oranges, I was not as excited for, but I swear that like the bottom row might be some of my favorites. I do love the shade Astro, this like beautiful, like I drool over like all of these. This beautiful blue shade is so pretty. I love it. Anytime I want to play with color, I have been reaching for this. I think it is a phenomenal palette. I know that they are doing another restock on this. My camera cut me off. I do know that they are doing another restock on this palette in April. I believe it might be the final restock, so if you haven't gotten your hands on this yet and you are interested, keep an eye out for that. I think it's worth it. I love Kaleidos eyeshadow formula in general. I think every eyeshadow palette I've tried from them, I think is just phenomenal, and this was definitely my favorite palette that I tried throughout the month of March. After that though, you guys, that is going to wrap it up for today's video, ranking all of the palettes that I was testing out throughout the month of March. I would love to know in the comments below, what palettes did you try, if any, in the month of March? What palettes would you recommend? What palettes should I pick up for future ranking videos? I want to hear from you guys. Do you have indie recommendations? I want to know. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting my channel as you always do. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in tomorrow's video. Bye.